morning.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm Zach.
And together we are Functionally Literate.
That's right.
Today we are discussing Morte again, Book 4.
We're getting into it.
Yeah. So I want to do the credits at the beginning.
We're going to do it first.
I want to credit Chris Mooney for being our audio recordist.
The fact that you don't hear him means he's doing a fantastic job.
That's right. I want to thank Jake Weller for our theme music. Love
you do hear
music.
him, and he is doing a fantastic job.
Yeah. Thank you, Zach, for co-hosting.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Vidwest Studios, for providing us a space and nearly all, and soon to be all, of our equipment. Also, thank our wives for putting up with us. We love you. Yeah.
It's good. Good shout out.
I feel like that's appropriate given what we're about to talk about.
That's true.
Oh, hey, that's my alarm to wake up. Because normally on a Saturday, for posterity, it's Saturday. It's 8:15 a.m. It's 8:15 a.m. and this is when I normally get up on Saturdays. Okay, so Book 4 of Morte it's an interesting one. Is there anything, broadly speaking, we want to talk about before we start telling the story?
I mean, I can't think of anything. I think really the most major thing happens right at the beginning.
Okay, then let's get into it.
Chapter 1. How Merlin was assaulted and daughtered on one of the ladies of the lake, and how he was shut in a rock under a stone and there died.
It's a hell of a way to start a story.
Yeah, it's, boy, pour one out for Merlin.
Nay. Good riddance.
Fallen into a trap many a fine gentleman has, which is unrequited love.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
You hate to see it.
Yeah.
Merlin says, this is a fine little number right here. And she says, I don't like that you referred to me like that.
So in the last story, King Arthur got married to Lady Guinevere.
He did.
And then, at the reception, there was a whole kerfuffle. There was a lady who ran in on her horse, and a hart, a doe, and
the brachet. Don't forget the brachet.
Along with like 60 hounds.
Yeah.
Just made a fucking mess and ran off. And so the woman that was there was taken by a knight, and King Pellinore was sent after her to recover her. That was his adventure. And so when he came back, the lady hung around. Her name was Nimue. And Nimue, she went under Merlin's tutelage to learn magic, and the reason why is, as you said, Zach, he fell in love with her. And so she tolerated that to learn magic.
For the sake of learning magic.
Right. Once she had finished learning magic, she was ready to leave. The problem was, Merlin was so head over heels in love with her that he couldn't go a full day without being by her side. He would rather die than not being by her side.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're madly in love?
You
retire.
That's right. You go, I can't do anything else, I guess.
Yeah. So he just lovesick.
Yeah. It's so in this version it's interesting. Her name's Nineveh.
Okay.
But that's really sort of irrelevant. It's very upfront with like she's trying to learn Merlin's secrets.
Yeah.
And Merlin's like, I will show you literally everything I know. Just spend time with me.
Yep.
But his advances get to the point where she has to make him promise not to use his magic to somehow convince or coerce her into the act of love.
Yes.
Which I don't know. Like there's no explanation of the things Merlin was actually doing. But at some point she's like, look, I need your word that you're not going to like trick me into sleeping with you, which he has done for the sake of other people.
Literally his first adventure.
King Uther.
Yeah.
Or use magic to make me do something
So
that I don't want to do.
So I have an excerpt here, specifically talking about this. Oft times Merlin would have had her privily away by his subtle crafts. Then she made him to swear that he should never do none enchantment upon her if he would have his will, and so he sware. So he wouldn't have her privily away, so he wouldn't, like, what, like, steal her away in a secret place?
I thought I said he would have her.
Right, like,
Yeah.
he would do that, and she was like, don't do that.
Well, I think what that is just like they would be alone. They'd be in private.
Don't arrange for things to
And-
make us be alone privately.
Well, I don't think that's what's saying. I think it's saying they would be in private sometimes.
Yeah.
And she's like, hey, there's no one else around. So I'm going to need you to promise that while this is happening, you're not going to be doing any shady stuff.
No rape.
Yeah.
No. Originally, when we talked about this, you interpreted it as, do not disguise yourself as someone else to trick me into having sex with you.
Right.
And he was like, okay, I swear.
Yeah.
Do you think that's still an accurate interpretation?
I mean, I think that would be his... If I were to imagine Merlin to use his magic to take advantage of a woman, I would think that is how.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he swore he wouldn't do that.
That's right. He said, I'm not going to cast any enchantments on you. I will not use my magic to covertly sleep with
You know what he did not swear? He did not swear that he would stop haranguing her.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that's where the ultimate problem comes to.
So, well, anyway, circling
from.
back. Merlin retires. Merlin goes and talks to Arthur before he leaves, right? Like, there's some stuff that he's got to tell Arthur before he leaves, which is, like, basically everything he feels Arthur needs to know that's going to happen in the future because he's not going to be there, right? Because he can see the future. What those things are, we don't know, but Arthur was told those things.
Yeah.
And he warned Arthur to keep an eye on his sword Excalibur and the scabbard that held it, because it would be stolen by a woman Arthur trusted most.
Yeah.
And who that woman is, that'll come up later.
Now remember, way back in the Greek myths episode, old Hesiod said, and I quote, trust a woman and you trust a thief.
Yeah, well, Hesiod was a misogynist prick.
That's true, but he was right this time. Vindicated.
So, the day Merlin's leaving, Arthur tells him that he would miss him. And then he says, and this is a direct quote, "Yet had you more gladly than all your lands to have me again." Which means what, do you think? I couldn't quite...
I'm not sure. Say that again.
"Yet had you more gladly than all your lands to have me again." That's what Arthur said.
Oh, I think he's saying, but I wish you would stay.
Yeah.
Because Merlin's like, I'm going to go off and travel. And he's like, well, if only you would, as gladly as you travel, stay with me.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, oh no, I'm sorry. Merlin said that.
Oh.
So,
Well, now I'm not sure what this is.
so yet had you more gladly than all your lands to have me again, is what Merlin says. Well, so Arthur replies, he's like, well, since you know of your adventure, purvey for it, and put away by your crafts that misadventure. Basically like, hey, you can see the future.
Why can't you stop this?
So don't get yourself killed. Don't die. And Merlin's like, nay, it will not be so. And he left. It's like,
Yeah, so in my version, Arthur's like, can't you stop it? And Merlin says, no, I can't.
yeah.
So it's not that he didn't want to or that he chose not to. He, for some reason, was unable.
Love.
It'll do that to you.
Probably.
Yeah.
So yeah, he leaves, and then shortly after, Nimue... Wait, hold on. What do we want to call her? Do we want to call her Nimue?
It doesn't matter. We know who it is.
All right. The Damsel of the Lake is how the book
Yeah.
refers to her.
Yeah.
But her name is, in my version, when it referred to her by name, it was Nimue.
Mm-hmm.
So she left. after Merlin did, and then Merlin started following her after she left. And so then, they cross the sea to the land of Benwick. That's where King Bon from Book 1 is from.
Mm-hmm.
There they spoke with King Bon's wife. Her name is Elaine. And they saw the boy, Lancelot, there.
Yeah.
Lancelot's a boy still.
Mm-hmm.
And so
That's
Queen
beautiful.
Elaine, she's sorrowful for the war that her husband is still in. So, for those of you that didn't read Book 1, King Bon of Benwick and King Bors of Gaul, that's France, they have been in this war for a while, like a long while at this point, with King Claudius.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bon's wife is sorrowful about that, and Merlin says, do not fret, and he points at Lancelot. This child, in his 20th year, shall get your revenge on King Claudius. All Christendom shall speak of it. So I looked that up, because I never heard that word before. Christendom means literally every Christian kingdom.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
This was a word you were familiar with.
I am familiar with the word Christendom.
This word came up a lot in this book specifically, and it had never come up before.
Yeah, it sort of broadly speaking was, as you imagine it, the West.
Yeah.
That was Christianized.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so anyway, so he's like, all Christendom shall speak of it. He will be the most famous man in the world, and I know his first name is Galahad. And Elaine's like, that is true. His first name is Galahad. Like, come on. You're going to believe what this guy says because he knows your son's first name?
He's just a dream reader, this guy.
Well, anyway, she's like, oh, Merlin, shall I live to see my son, such a man of prowess? And he's like, yes, lady, on my peril you shall see it, and live many winters after.
Which may be more a blessing or a curse than a blessing.
It occurs to me that this is an interesting plot device for Mallory. Like, up to this point, he's just used Merlin to talk about things that are going to happen later.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Well, and it lends, the mystical to it. Because if Galahad Lancelot just grew up and became a fantastic knight, people would be like, wow, that's awesome. But it's not extraordinary.
Right.
Like, someone has to be the best knight. So the fact that 20 years prior, Merlin...
Not
well,
20
I guess
years,
not
he was
20,
a boy.
10 to 15 years prior,
Sure.
Merlin's like, hey, this kid is going to be the greatest knight. Now when it happens, it's not just,
It was prophesized.
wow, what cool. It's a prophecy.
Yeah. What I put in my notes was, I don't know if using Merlin as a mouthpiece is bad writing on his part or the Vulgate cycle.
Well, so this is an interesting part of the story. So I guess to sort of summarize like what happens next is Merlin is taking Nineveh or Nimue on this sort of sightseeing trip where he's like, I'm going to show you all the coolest secret places.
Really just showing her everything.
And they get to a cave, and Merlin's like, inside this cave is awesome. And she's like, oh, I'm scared. You should go first.
Yeah.
And he's like, cool, I totally will. And then he goes in, and then she takes the enchanted rock that is the door to the cave and closes it. And it is enchanted so that only the person that closed it can open it.
Yeah.
So Merlin is now stuck inside, and that is where he will die.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting about that is that this happens immediately after Arthur gets married. And she becomes the new Merlin. She is the advisor.
Yeah.
So in the next adventure we talk about, she's going to be doing the kind of stuff that you would normally expect Merlin to do.
Yeah, because she was like kind of serving Merlin's purpose in this story, like in later chapters. Yeah.
And so when Arthur marries, the mystical element of his kingdom changes from the masculine to the feminine.
That is interesting.
But it's informed by the masculine. She wasn't just this great sorceress all by herself. She learned from Merlin.
Yeah.
So the masculine element informs the feminine element and then is put away.
But can she see the future? I don't think she can.
I don't know that she can see the future.
Yeah.
I think she's just very wise and has good insight.
And can do all
Like,
the other things Merlin
Yeah,
could
like
do.
I mean, she can cast spells, she can do enchantments, she can do all that stuff. I don't think she
Presumably
can
teleport.
Yeah, I don't think she can prophesy.
Yeah.
I think more she's just really good at telling what people's intentions are and is, wise and is like, hey, this is probably the best option and you should just do that.
Yeah.
And so I do wonder what specific connotation that having the power of prophecy assigned to the mystical masculine has, and why does the mystical feminine not have it?
I feel like that would be beyond the scope of Mallory, because I'm pretty sure that was a Vulgate thing. I mean,
Well, sure, but that means that idea has survived for a very long time.
Yeah,
Mallory might not have come up with it,
No.
but it did at some point get inserted, and the fact that it remains has meaning.
Yeah.
And the best that I could come up with, because I've been chewing on this for weeks now,
Fair enough.
is that prophesying is, by its nature, impersonal. And one of the many attributes of the feminine is that it is personal. And so the masculine leadership does not take into account the individual's feelings, their motivations, what they want. It just is like, this is what's going to happen, and this is what we're going to do about it. Whereas the feminine does not do that. We're not worried about outcome. We're worried about the people.
That's a point.
And so I think that's what Nineveh is symbolizing, that sort of transition of Arthur being like, he's in this time of chaos where he needs more order. He has to subjugate these kings. He has to solidify his own kingdom. He's got to make sure his power base is stable. Once that happens, and it's happened because he's gotten married. You don't get married when your life is tumultuous. Like when your life is stable, you're like, now I can get married.
Yeah.
And then it'll make it more tumultuous. But that's okay, because you can handle it now. Because there's not all these other outside problems. That's when Arthur's leadership moves from a kind of ruthless, impersonal, like, I need to do what I have to do to make this work, to survive, to make sure it all stands up, into, but now how do I do what's good for everybody? How do I do what's right by my knights and by my subjects? And that is a more sort of feminine style of leadership, because it's more interested in the people than it is the thing of leadership.
Looking at it another more anecdotal way, I have known men, and I have been this man, men who know everything, men who predict everything, but I cannot think of a specific or any woman who has done the same thing. Like, I cannot think of women who just like straight up just make predictions about how things are gonna go constantly, like Merlin does. Like women typically, I mean, by my anecdote, don't do that.
Yeah. What I have seen, I don't think too many of the women I've done are concerned with, like, what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But what I do hear a lot from the women that I interact with is, why they do that?
Yeah.
And they're like, I bet he's doing that because of this.
Yeah.
So it's that interest in the motivation and what drives people and how they feel that I think that's sort of the big difference. And now Arthur's moving into the like, okay, now that I am the king, undisputed, I don't have constant civil wars I've got to put down. I don't have, horrible things on the border I need to worry about. What do my knights want?
Yeah.
What do they want to do? What can I have them do? What's good for them?
Mm-hmm. So this rock, so the specific passage, which doesn't give me much to run on, a rock, whereas was a great wonder and wrought by enchantment that went under a great stone. So I looked this up because that made no freaking sense to me. You interpreted it as a cave.
Yeah.
So in the Vulgate cycle, this was a tomb dedicated to two lovers. The lovers were a king and a peasant woman that were having this like secret forbidden affair.
Yeah.
And they were buried there. And so Merlin wanted to show this to Nimue, like, isn't this romantic kind of thing? There's lots of great stuff in their tomb. And so they're like in the entrance chamber, and Nimue's like, I don't know, maybe why don't you go in there and then like come back and tell me all about it? I don't really want to go in there. So yeah, he goes.
Wait, it's
in
a tomb.
there.
It's spooky.
Right, it's
I don't wanna
spooky.
go in.
So he goes in there, and then she traps him in there, and that is where he would die slowly.
Yeah,
because no one could get him back out except for her, and she was never going to come back.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part of what strengthens my argument for the symbolism there is that the stone that traps it can only be removed by that which put it away.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if they are, in fact, a symbol for Arthur's style of leadership, it has to be Arthur that decides to go back to the more masculine, aggressive form of leadership.
That's interesting.
You can't force him to do it. Nobody can, like, unleash that in him unless he decides, like, all right, it's time to bring Merlin back out.
Mm. I did skip over this bit. The specific reasoning why she did it. She was afraid of him because he was a devil's son, but nothing she could do could get rid of him. Like,
yeah. Well, and that's another interesting part is that the recognition that there's something not good about Merlin.
Yeah.
Which means about, again, I'm sticking with my metaphor because I think I'm right.
Yeah.
About this more aggressive, impersonal style of leadership. Like, it was sort of a necessary evil. Where, like, this isn't the best, but we have to use it for now.
Yeah.
But then when you have the option for that other kind of leadership going, oh, yeah, this is not good. Like, we should stop doing that. We have to stop that somehow.
But also on a man-to-woman level, no means no, guys. And
That's
if you don't leave women alone, they will find a way to kill you. So
if you ever have a woman say, hey, you promise not to rape me, you're doing something wrong. They should never have to ask that.
Ever.
That should be a given.
Ever.
If you have to promise not to do it, go find a mirror and look deeply into it, please.
And with that, we're moving on to chapter 2.
How 5 kings came into this land to war against King Arthur, and what counsel Arthur had against them.
So Arthur gets on his horse and goes to Camelot to have a feast, which is, I think, just a really festive meal time.
Yeah, well, so in the at this time, Britain would have been Catholic.
Yeah,
because there wasn't any other church yet. Well, I guess maybe there was. There could have. I don't remember exactly when this is supposed to have happened and when the schism happened. But anyway, they're Catholic, and in the Catholic liturgical calendar, there are many feast days. So you have your big feasts of Christmas, Easter, Pentecost. Pentecost is a real big one that happens in the Le Morte Arthur.
Pentecost comes up in this story.
Yeah, but there's also the feast day of the conversion of St. Paul. There's the feast day of St. Peter. Like, there's other feast days.
Yeah.
And so if they're really involved in their faith, which in a lot of times in the book, it's like, all right, and then they went to bed. And then in the morning, after hearing Mass, they did this. And it's like, well, it seems like they're pretty into it because they're going to daily Mass.
Yeah.
That or everything happens on Sunday, which would... That would be impious because it's Sunday. You're supposed to not work. Maybe they don't see jousting as work.
No, jousting
that's
is
for
fun.
That's my hobby. So it could just be that there was a feast day that was important to Arthur. He's like, this matters. We should do this. So there's plenty of excuses.
Right. So after his feast, he goes to a place called Cardoyle. You know what that is? So it's in England. It's south of Humber, which is like an estuary in the middle of the east side of England. So it makes a good reference to kind of tell you where Cardoyle is, because I looked at this on a map, because Humber actually exists. So looking at approximately where it would be on a map, Cardoyle is like the center east side, like, because it's just south of Humber, which is in the northern part of England, just barely, right? Yeah. And so, like, looking at where it is, this is, like, a really, like, luscious place to be. Like Arthur is going here to vacation.
Yeah.
Right?
Resort.
And so, but while he's there, he gets a message that the king of Denmark and the king of Ireland, his brother, it says it's his brother. I'm not aware of, other than Kay, any brothers that he has.
Could be by marriage.
Probably.
Yeah.
The king of the Vale the king of Solis, and the king of the Isle of Longtains, that's 5, they're wrecking England with a big fat army. And, just pillaging cities.
Just a
castles.
dummy, thick army.
Just terrible tidings. So Arthur reads these terrible tidings, and he says, "Alas, I haven't rested a month since being crowned High King, and I'm never gonna rest. I swear that now. My people will not be destroyed if I have anything to say about it. My people will go with me and stay with those who will allow it." So he's like, I'm gonna go to war, and I'm gonna lodge with whoever lets me lodge with them.
Yeah, he's just getting sick of this. He's like, again, guys, come on.
So he writes to Pellinor. He's like, he's in the letter. He tells Pellinor what's up. He asks him to get there quick with a small party, with all of Pellinor's people following after. He's like, I need you to hurry, and I need you to bring everyone with you as soon as they can after you. King Pellinor, by the way, is the knight who chases the strange beast. He's also a knight of the Round Table. Which, as an aside, I looked up the strange beast. I know, I love the giraffe theory. I still believe it. But the art of
there's
thing,
very cool art of the questing beast.
It looks absurd.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like this ugly lizard thing.
Yeah.
With just this really long, snake neck. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, it's a very strange creature.
But as I said, I still
100% it's a giraffe.
It's a giraffe. It's totally a giraffe.
I will not be dissuaded.
So the barons are pissed that Arthur's leaving just so quickly. Arthur didn't care. He writes back to them, "Come to me. I'm not in court right now."
Yeah.
Which I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Just this idea, what? You can't leave court. Too late. I'm already gone.
So I'm gone, and also I'm the king.
So come here.
Yeah.
So then he goes to his wife, and he's like, "Lady, make you ready, for you're going with me. I cannot miss you for long. You shall make me stronger by my side, whatever adventures come my way. My lady will not be in danger." Guinevere's like, "I am at your command, and shall be ready when you are."
Yeah, so in my version, it's a little more succinct, but he basically comes and he's like, "Hey, will you come with me to, keep me courageous? Because if you're there, I will be more brave." And she's like, "Love to. Let's do that."
Love to. So the next morning, Arthur and Guinevere leave Cardoyle. I don't know how it's actually pronounced, but it doesn't really matter because this place is never going to be mentioned again. So they leave with their entourage, and they go north into a forest that's next to Humber. So the 5 kings, they catch word of Arthur's location. And one of the king's brothers, advises, "You know that Arthur is the most chivalrous man in the world. He proved it when he fought the 11 kings. So just quickly go to him, night and day until we get there. The longer he sits there, the bigger his armies will get, and the weaker we'll be by comparison. So when we get there, he'll be so courageous and sure of himself that he'll come to the field with very few people. So let's set upon him and, quote, we shall slay down. None of his knights will escape." Literally his plan is, let's just get there as fast as possible. He's an honorable guy. He'll just fight us when we get there.
Yeah. If we challenge him, he'll accept because he's a good knight. And that's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah.
And we'll make sure that he doesn't have time to, muster everyone.
Yeah.
Which is smart. Tactically, that's a sound decision.
I think it's interesting how we see a lot of this, right? We've got Arthur and his people being honorable knights, and that means a specific thing, and all of their enemies know what that means and will take advantage of it.
Yes. Well, you have to paint the enemy as dishonorable.
Yeah.
Honor ceases to be honor when it takes advantage of itself. So if you're like, I can manipulate this guy by making him feel obligated to do this thing that I want, it's like, well, then you're a shit person. That's not good.
It's my first time hearing the phrase, "we shall slay down."
I hear that in the club all the time. I'm kidding. I don't go to the club, guys.
Slay.
Yas, queen.
Anyways, anything before we move on to chapter 3?
No, it's a good tactical move. They know that Arthur has the advantage, and they're like, look, we don't have the privilege of being honorable if we want to win.
Yeah.
So let's just go fuck them up as soon as we get there.
Chapter 3.
How King Arthur had a do with them and overthrew them, and slew the 5 kings and made them remnant to flee.
So, yeah, as it happens, the 5 kings felt that this was good advice that this king's brother recommended, and so they did just that. They attacked Arthur's host, which, that's his army, right?
Yes.
Okay. So they attacked Arthur's army at night while he and his people were in their pavilions, sleeping.
Yeah.
Which, as a reminder,
unarmored. Yeah.
pavilions are big tents.
Yeah.
They're really big, fancy royal tents.
Yeah.
So in that moment, Arthur was lying in bed with Guinevere. So Sir Kay, he comes into Arthur's pavilion. Kay is Arthur's brother, his adopted brother. So Sir Kay, he comes in, and he's like, brother, we're unarmed. This is not good. And so then Sir Gawain and Sir Griflet come in, like, we shall have no need. Their pavilion was nearby. That's why they came in so quickly. I assume Gawain and Griflet felt that the king's men could defend the king well enough without the battle getting to them right away. Like, that's...
Well, and they don't know that they're going to be attacked.
Okay.
And these are honorable men, and they assume that their enemy is the same. And so they're like, it's the middle of the night. Why? No one's going to attack us now. That would be a dirty, rotten, shitty trick.
Well, they were wrong.
And certainly they wouldn't do that.
They
overhear from the bushes, sneaking up on them right now.
Yeah. Hey, just a quick reminder, if you live in America, it's voting day. Today, it's the primaries. You gotta go vote. And I'm not gonna tell you how to vote because this is a bit about local elections. Voting local is important, guys.
It is.
Like, it's arguably more important than whatever the fuck is going on nationally.
So, what's the political landscape looking like in America at the moment?
Man, it's been a really fucking weird couple weeks, dude.
It's
been so
wild.
weird.
I've
Like,
seen some
literally,
wild shit.
Trump nearly got killed.
I know.
And then a week later, Biden stepped down. It's been so fucking weird. And nothing I say is going to change your vote as far as that goes. But
It's
there's a bunch of
extreme.
local shit going on in your area today that you should go vote on.
True.
Also, if you lived in Missouri House District 50, go vote for Greg Bush. He's my guy. Go vote for him. Okay, thanks. Bye. Yeah. Like, as soon as they're like, there's no need, like, there was, like, a loud noise, and then a bunch of people were shouting, treason! Treason! Treason!
And there was suddenly a need.
There was suddenly a need. King Arthur's like, alas, we be betrayed. And he cries, unto arms, fellows. And so they did. And then, a wounded knight comes to the king like, sir, save yourself and my lady, the queen. Our host is destroyed and many of our people slain. So, yeah, the king and the queen, along with Kay and Griflet and Gawain, they all get on their horses and they ride for Humber to pass over it.
Yep.
By the way, if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. I genuinely don't know how it's pronounced.
I think it's Umber. I think they just don't say the H.
Umber. Well,
Yeah.
that would make sense because Northumberland.
Yeah. But I don't know if that's actually true because everyone in the United Kingdom says everything weird. So
We'll get to that later.
I'm just saying, you ever been to Edinburgh?
It's a
It's
point.
Edinburgh.
It's a point.
First of all.
Yeah. Well, let's go with Umber then. That sounds better
I
the
think
top.
that, yeah.
So they get to Umber with the intention to pass over it, but the problem was the water was so rough, so they worried about passing over it. Arthur turns to his wife. He's like, now you must choose whether you will stay with me on this adventure on this side. If you're taken, they will slay you. Guinevere turns to her husband and says, I would rather die in the water than to fall into your enemy's hands and die that way.
Fair.
So while they're discussing this, Sir Kay sees the 5 kings approaching on horseback. Just those 5, with spears in hand.
They're alone, yeah.
Yeah. And so he's like, look, there the 5 kings are. Let's go fight them. Sir Gawain says, that's folly. We are but 3, and they're 5. Sir Griflet's like, that's true. Kay's like, no force. And so I didn't understand what that meant, no force. But the rest of what he says did make perfect sense. He's like, I'll take 2 of them, and then you 3 take the other 3. And so I thought this was interesting, because Gawain is not including Arthur in this, like, equation, and Kay totally is.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because, you know, Gawain is, like, viewing this guy as his king. Kay's viewing this guy as his brother.
Yeah. Gawain's like, we'll protect you. And Kay's like, get your ass up,
He's
dude.
got a sword.
Work. You got a magic sword, asshole.
Yeah.
Be involved.
So Kay makes his horse run as fast as it can. He strikes one of the 5 kings with his spear so hard it goes through his shield, through his body. He fell and died instantly.
Immediately kills him.
Immediately kills him.
Kay's a badass.
Gawain did the same thing to another king, but with his sword. Arthur did the same maneuver as Kay, striking a 3rd king straight through with his spear. Griflet charged the 4th king and shoved him down so hard his neck broke. And then, true to his word, Kay ran at the 5th king and struck him with the pommel of his sword so hard that it cracked his helmet, and he fell to the ground head first, dead. Can you, like, I'm just picturing that. It looks so goofy and funny in my head.
Yes.
Like, just, like, conking someone on the head, and they fall head first and just die.
Yeah, I mean, sans the death part, that seems like a scene that would be in a Monty Python
It
skit.
really does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Arthur's like, nice strike. Kay's like, thanks.
Well, I just imagine, like, the other guy, there was a scene before when one of the kings was, like, lost his helmet and he got this discount helmet, but he was convinced that it was magical or something.
Yeah.
And then he rides in, Kay just, like, taps it lightly on the top and it just falls apart and he goes, well, this was a poor purchase.
That would be good.
You know, and you're like, this has definitely happened in a skit somewhere.
Yeah. Well, so Arthur, what he actually said, he was like, that was a good strike, and you got 2, just as you said you would. I'll honor you as long as I live. I mean, you know, it is pretty impressive to just, like, because, you know, nobody else in this book does that. Nobody else just runs someone straight through their shield and their body. When
Yeah, I can't think of another. Not off the top of my head. It may have happened. If it is, it's probably like Sir Tristram, maybe.
So when
Lancelot
I
or
say this
Galahad.
book, I mean this specific story.
Oh,
that
yeah,
doesn't
no,
happen
no,
in this
nobody
story
else does
other
it
than
now.
that.
But I don't think it happens.
It happens a few times. I don't. It's happened in earlier books once or twice.
Yeah, but it's like the legendary knights. You know,
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, this one guy who didn't have a name did it. It's like, no,
Yeah.
this guy was awesome.
So they get Guinevere on a barge. And the whole time that, like, they're, like, moving all of Guinevere's stuff onto this barge, Guinevere, she's praising Sir Kay. She's like, I'm going to tell all the ladies about this. You said you'd kill 2, and you killed 2 masterfully. You are gonna get laid after this. And then she leaves. I added that last bit. That was embellishment.
Yeah, she did not say that. She would never. That would be very uncouth.
It would be. But she did say she's going to tell all the ladies about this.
Oh, yeah.
So the king and the knights, they head back. And on their way, they find most of Arthur's remaining people. Most of the people that survived, they had run away into the forest.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, he tells them, the 5 kings are dead, so let's all hold each other this day, and when their people discover their kings are slain, they will be so sorrowful that they won't be able to help themselves, which that happened, as predicted, you know, when the men of the 5 kings discovered that their kings were dead, they fell from their horses because they were so upset. And so then Arthur and his people, they came, and they killed 30,000 men. And when the battle was over, he thanked God, and then he called for his queen back, and she did come back, and they made great joy. Is this a euphemism? It feels like one.
I mean, it could be. It might not be. It could just be that they were happy.
Could be.
They were just like, yay! That was averted without much terribleness. You know, it was kind of quick.
So that's the chapter, but I want to note here the way the text portrays Arthur here. So this battle against the 30,000 men. It says that Arthur went into it, but with a few people, and that when the battle was over, the king kneeled down and thanked God meekly. So if this was a series of real events, I would say that sounds like propaganda. That said, it's fiction, so I'll suspend disbelief and accept that the great King Arthur killed 30,000 men with just a few men.
Yeah. Well, and I think that would reflect that change in leadership style, not in that he's like, well, we're not just going to murder 30,000 people. No, we have to do that, right? Like, we have to defend ourselves.
Yeah.
But he's not risking the lives of all of his men to do it.
Yeah.
Every battle up to this point has been a very bloody thing, lots of casualties on both sides. And in this, it feels like he's like, look, the leadership is gone. These guys aren't really that into the fight. So I'm just going to bring a few guys.
What's a few?
Who knows? Who knows? It could be 5,000, you know? But it's not, I think the point in saying it's a few is it's not everyone he could have.
Yeah.
He chose to use lesser force. Now, whether that was out of confidence and arrogance or out of concern for his own people, you could debate. But I think the idea of him kneeling on the battlefield, meekly thanking God afterwards, kind of gets rid of the confidence part, where it's like, doesn't sound like an arrogant guy.
No.
So I think he was just like, look, we don't need everybody.
Yeah.
You guys are welcome to stay here, stay safe.
Yeah.
I'll take care of you.
Yeah.
And then, he still murders 30,000 people, but you would think after 30,000 29,000 deaths, maybe the last 1,000 would have given up.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like they did.
Doesn't sound like they did at all, no. Anyways, moving on to chapter 4.
How the battle was finished, he came, and how King Arthur founded an abbey where the battle was.
So this chapter basically just describes like the cleanup of the conflict.
Yeah.
And it talks about replacing 8 knights of the Round Table because 8 of them died.
Yes.
So someone came to Arthur, told him that Pellinor was within 3 miles of the camp. So he tells the messenger to go to Pellinor and, update him on the fact that the 5 kings are dead. Hey, war's over. War was very short. It wasn't even a war.
Yeah.
So once Pellinor knew this, he goes to Arthur's camp with all of his people. He salutes Arthur's people and Arthur, and there was great joy made on every side. If this is a euphemism, that's
debaucherous.
So, casualty report. Arthur lost 200 men and 8 knights of the Round Table in that initial attack on his men's pavilion.
Yeah.
So, the king arranged to build an abbey at the site of the Battle of the 5 Kings, and he wanted it to be named the Abbey of La Belle Adventure. So, also, as predicted, the countries of the 5 kings were devastated that they lost their kings.
Yeah.
Like,
As you would.
Arthur was spot on. So, since King Arthur's enemies were in pretty low moods when they found out, of note, the King of North Wales, who is relatively nearby, and the kings of the North, that's plural, since they were all, like, in pretty low moods, Arthur went back to Camelot. He didn't think it was a good idea to stick around. So, he arranges for this abbey to be built, and then he gets out of there.
Yeah.
So when he gets back to Camelot, he goes to Pellinor. He wants Pellinor's advice about who should replace the 8 dead knights, like who should take their place. Pellinor is like, well, there are many options, both old and young. So I suggest you choose 4 old knights and 4 young ones. And Arthur's like, okay, who do you
Smart.
suggest?
That's good advice.
Is it?
I think so.
You think so?
Well, you have a chivalric order. You can't have just all the older guys.
That's true.
Because, if the average age of your knights is 50, not to down anyone who's over the hill, but like, you're not as spry as you once were. And if you are, you're David Goggins. Like, you're not a human. You're something else.
David Goggins is not human, confirmed by Zach.
That's fact. But on the other hand, you need the temperance and the wisdom of age to keep in check the younger, hot-headed, hot-blooded guys. Because if you have 150 Gawains, you'll never not be in a war. But if you have 150 Pellinors, you'll never win a war. So I just think you have to have that balance.
Fair. Also, so Arthur asks Pellinor, well, who do you suggest then if we're going to go with 4 old and 4 young? So of the old, Pellinor suggested King Uriens. That's the one who married Arthur's sister / aunt, depending on how you look at it.
Morgan Le Fay.
In mine, it's sister Morgan Le Fay. Yeah, King Uriens was married to Morgan. The King of the Lake, Sir Hervis de Revel. He came up in an earlier book, but I don't remember what his involvement was.
I don't either.
And Sir Galagars. Never heard of him. That's a new one. Of the young, Pellinor suggested Arthur's nephew, Gawain, Sir Griflet Le Fils de Dieu, who Pellinor battled by a fountain back in Book 1 and had a high opinion of. And Sir Kay, because he is a very impressive knight who recently did even more impressive things.
Yeah.
You know?
Killed 2 kings.
Like, I think the killing 2 kings quickly thing really cemented his slot on the round table.
Right.
So yeah, Arthur agreed that Kay was the most worthy to be a knight of the round table, and here the chapter ends before naming the 4th knight.
Yep.
And so I attribute this to Caxton, because so I looked at the bibliographical note at the very beginning. I'm pretty sure that Caxton created the chapters.
Yeah.
Like, he created those divisions, because in the bibliographical note, it talks about how Caxton wasn't a very good editor. So for context, Mallory finished writing this text around 1469, 1470. He died before the printing press was invented. And so Caxton, he was one of the first to use a printing press. And this was one of the first stories that he printed. And so he like I said, he wasn't a very good editor. There would often be misprints that, like, when people read them, was like, this could not have been what the author intended. He would put in chapters, like, he would end and begin chapters, like, in the middle of sentences. Like, this is what that feels like, and it kind of explains some other chapters that we've read. Like, why does it end here? Why does it begin here? And it's because Caxton was the first and worst editor of the printing press.
You know, you make a lot of mistakes when you're the first in a profession.
Yeah.
You know, the first farmer did a bad job. That's just fact, you know? Now we're like, we got this figured out. But
Yeah.
the first guy to ever do it was like, what the fuck is happening?
Right.
So, I'm not surprised.
Right. Moving on to chapter 5.
How Sir Tor was made Knight of the Round Table, and how Bagdemagus was displeased.
So, in an earlier episode, and I noticed this when I was editing it, when Bagdemagus first came up, we could not agree on how the pronunciation was.
Yeah.
And I kind of, like, bowled over you there, like, in the editing. Like, I noticed when I was editing it. Yeah, I know, but I felt bad about it. I was like, damn, I just was not listening to Zach at all.
Well, I was wrong, so maybe you were right to do that.
No, we were both wrong, because it's pronounced Bagdemagus.
Bagdemagus.
Yeah.
See, I think I thought Bagdemagus? Bagdemagus? Bagdemagus, right? Because Bagdemagus.
I think you thought it was Bagdemagus.
Bagdemagus. So I have recently discovered the reason that I thought that was because I've been trying to learn Latin.
Yeah.
So I've been reading a lot of Latin stuff. Latin pronunciation has penultimate stress, which means the stress of the word is always on the second to last syllable.
Oh, okay.
So I've just been, like, unconsciously doing that to all of the names that I'm reading. And I'm like, this is not a Latin name.
Okay.
That's not how you say that.
Okay.
So I just sound dumb.
Getting back to the reason why we're all here, the story. So Pellinor provided Arthur a choice between 2 potential knights for the final seat.
Yeah.
Sir Tor or Sir Bagdemagus. Bagdemagus is a cousin of Arthur, which we know because Merlin told him.
Yeah.
Like, he told it to him in a random moment, too. It had nothing to do with anything at the time.
Hey, by the way, that's your cousin.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like, who the fuck is that guy? He's never come up, but he comes up now.
But he's your cousin.
So Pellinor recently discovered that Sir Tor was his son.
Yes. That was a big to-do.
Yeah.
He was very excited to find out
Yeah.
he had a son and that he was such a sterling example of chivalry.
So So in this moment, he says that. He's like, I acknowledge that I should not praise him because he is my son. That said, setting that aside, the lad is a great knight. There is no better of his age in the land. He's in great shape, and he is unwilling to do wrong. Now, these are all true things. Like, he proved himself on his adventure in the last book.
In my version, he was basically like, for the fourth of the youngest, you have, I would say, two great options. You've got Bagdemagus, and you've got Tor. However, I feel like I cannot recommend Sir Tor because he's my son, and that would be unfair.
And then he goes on to explain why he recommends his son.
But I would let his actions speak for itself, and I'll let you pick.
Yeah.
And so Arthur was like, yeah, I mean, Sir Tor is pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, he says, Sir Tor has proved himself already to be a knight of the Round Table. He says little and does more, and he knows none in his court that can compare to Tor's prowess and might. So he says he'll have Tor, and he'll leave Bagdemagus for another time.
I do like the little bit of instruction in good masculinity there. Say little and do more.
Yeah.
You're like, that's good advice. Shut the fuck up. Yeah. And just do what you're supposed to be doing, man.
Men do love to talk when they have nothing to say.
That's true.
We would know. We have a whole podcast.
Anyway, you guys listening to us talk. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you so much. So all these newly established knights, they take their seats at the table. Bagdemagus, he was pissed. You know, he didn't get picked.
Yeah,
so,
he's going to hold that grudge.
So he leaves the court. He takes his squire with him. They ride to a forest until they find a cross. And there, Bagdemagus stops to pray. While he's praying, his squire examines the cross and sees written on it that Bagdemagus should never return unto the court again till he had won a knight's body of the Round Table, body for body.
Mm-hmm.
So the squire sees this, and he advises Bagdemagus that he should return to the court immediately. Bagdemagus says he won't until people praise him and say he's worthy to be a knight of the Round Table. So he's just like, literally, I'm never going back until they want me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So he rides on, and he eventually finds a branch of a holy herb, which is supposedly a sign of the Holy Grail, according to the narrative. I don't think Bagdemagus was aware of this.
No.
Bagdemagus,
that was pointed out for our edification.
Yeah.
By the way. No one will see this again until the Holy Grail, and it's pretty important.
Yeah. So he goes on many adventures at this time. While he's adventuring, he finds Merlin trapped in that tomb. Uh-huh. He tries to free Merlin, but he's just one man. And, when he tries it, it seems to him it would take the strength of 100 men.
Yeah.
Probably.
And, Merlin's on the other side of the rock. Help me! Help!
Yeah. Well, actually, Merlin tells him that the only one that can put him there is the only one that can get him out, rather, is the one that put him there.
He's like, all right, I appreciate your help, but you're wasting your time.
Yeah. So Bagdemagus had a little choice other than to stay with Merlin and wait till he died or leave. So he left. Yeah. He went on more unnamed adventures, and his adventuring proved himself, and so he returned to court eventually, and he was made a knight of the Round Table. Bagdemagus is not mentioned again in this book. That's why it very briefly talks about him in that way. He doesn't matter for the rest of the story.
Yeah, we're just setting up like, hey, he did eventually become a Knight of the Round Table.
Yeah. This was the thing that started him on his journey.
Yeah. Which
at first I thought that he was just kind of being a bit of a brat, but he used his anger, because it says in there, it says that he was wonderly wroth. I love that. And so that was the thing that spurred him to go on and do his own adventures, which is arguably a good thing for him to do.
He was being productive. He said, okay, they don't think I'm ready, or they thought somebody was more ready. I'm going to go make it so that I'm the most ready. Like, I'm going to prove, no, I can do it. And he did.
Chapter 6. How King Arthur, King Uriens, and Sir Accolon of Gaul chased a heart and of their marvellous adventures.
So this is the start of a new adventure, a new arc. This adventure will go on for quite a few chapters. So as the blurb said, these three guys, they were chasing after a deer. They didn't do too well. They chased after this deer so persistently that they just killed their horses.
Yeah.
Like, horses, they are known to just keep running and running and running until they die if you allow them to. And that's what these knights did.
Mm-hmm.
King Uriens reasoned that, they should keep going on foot and they'll find lodging if they keep going.
Yeah.
So eventually they come across a water bank, and there they saw the deer they were chasing with its throat in a brachet's mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Arthur claimed the kill and dressed the body.
Yep. He's like, got him.
Got him. I did it. Me. Not the brachet. Me.
Well, so in my version, they had wounded the hart. Like, they were actively hunting it.
Mm-hmm.
It had been wounded. They were tracking it. Like, there was blood trail. And that's why they were so insistent. Like, no, we got to keep going. Because if it gets away, we'll never find it.
Okay.
And then we've wasted whatever arrow we used to shoot the thing.
That makes more sense. It's entirely possible that's what my text said, but and so this is something that I'm still grappling with because I have not read your version.
Yeah.
I have to translate all this archaic text so I can tell this story. Like it takes me a while to get through this stuff because it's I was this whole week taking notes on this, and when I reached chapter 13 or 14, I was just I'm just gonna read. And so I read up to chapter 19 and I comprehended a little. I really do need to take notes as I'm reading and translate things as I go, or I'm not gonna understand a fucking thing.
Yeah. So to anyone listening that wants to read it and maybe hasn't yet, I would recommend getting a modern version, something that says translated into modern idiom or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you're worried that you're losing something in the translation of that, get multiple versions.
Yeah.
Get different I guess they'd be editors, not authors, but different people's take on what the text is saying. Because then you have sort of an all-around idea of what was happening.
Yeah.
You get the different.
Because the version that I have, it is a version that is as true to the version Caxton made as possible while correcting for obvious errors.
Yeah.
So it's using a lot of words that just don't exist anymore, right? It's got a whole glossary in the back with those words and an appendix with it's got a whole glossary full of words that are used quite often, and it's got an appendix with words that are only used once.
Yeah.
Anyways, circling back to this, not about me having a hell of a time reading this. They got that deer, and this is when things get weird. So imagine a medieval yacht covered in vibrant, multicolored silks that trail in the water. Imagine this alluring ship coming right up to you on the riverbank. This is what happens to these three knights. They see this beautiful ship. Arthur decides to go check it out. Nobody was on the ship. This was very strange because the ship was just as fancy on the inside as the outside. So where were its owners? Suddenly, all the torches on the ship light up. It's nighttime right now. All the torches on the ship light up. And 12 damsels reveal themselves. And then they get on their knees before the king, and they call him by name. And they're like, King Arthur, wondrous king, Jesus save you. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
They eagerly welcomed him and his fellow knights, and they gave them a wonderful meal. Arthur said he'd never had a better meal in his life.
This is great.
Who
wouldn't love this?
Who wouldn't love this? This is not a trap at all.
No, couldn't be.
So, after the meal, the three knights, they were each led separately to individual bed chambers. It took little convincing for these women to get the knights to lay down. And
Shocker.
They slept great all through the night. And this is one of those things where I'm just wondering, did those knights fuck those ladies? Did that happen here? It feels like it might have happened here.
Maybe Sir Accolon is the unmarried one.
Yeah.
But the other two have wives.
They
would
do.
like to think they didn't.
Right.
So I will continue to believe that.
It's just there's a lot of undertones here. You can see why I went that direction.
Sure.
So, they slept great all through the night. In the morning, King Uriens woke up in his own bed in Camelot next to his wife Morgan.
Mhm.
He had gone to sleep on that ship 2 days away from Camelot. It would have taken 2 days travel for him to get there. He just wakes up at home like, oh, okay.
Must have been magic.
Yeah. As for Arthur, he woke in a dark prison to the sounds of prisoners yelling and complaining about deplorable nights.
Boom, boom.
Chapter 7. How Arthur took upon him to fight to be delivered out of prison, and also to deliver 20 knights that were in prison.
What are you complaining about? King Arthur demands. The prisoners were eager to explain. So they had been, most of them, imprisoned there for more or less 7 years. They'd been imprisoned by Sir Damas, and Sir Damas was a false knight and coward, according to them. He had a younger brother, Sir Ontzlake, that's spelled Ontzlake, whom he's been warring with. Damas will give him nothing of the estate, but that didn't stop Ontzlake from getting his own manor that he keeps from Damas. They reiterate here that Damas is a coward and without mercy. They really hate this
He's
guy.
just the worst fucking guy.
Yeah. They say that Ontzlake challenged Damas to a duel one-on-one, but he refused. He wants a champion to fight for him. But because everyone hates him, nobody will do it.
That's right.
So, like, literally every knight that he approached to fight for him, whenever they refuse, he imprisons them. 18 knights have already died in prison due to starving to death.
Yeah, just poor conditions and maltreatment.
Yep. So, the prisoners say that Ontzlake would have freed the prisoners if one would fight for him, but they would all rather die in prison than fight for him.
Yeah.
So,
I think this is a beautiful metaphor for cowardice killing chivalry.
So, wait, what do you mean?
Well, they go out of their way to be like, this guy is a coward.
Mm-hmm.
He's an awful guy. He's rude, but especially he's a coward. Like that's his defining feature in everybody's mind, is just absolute cowardice, lack of courage. And because of that, he's imprisoning knights.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, hey, you need to fight for me, which is a sign of cowardice.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all like, no, you're a knight. You can fight for yourself.
Yeah, like, honestly, like, if he's so cowardly, how do you even become a knight?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But so he's imprisoning them. So chivalry is held captive by cowardice and withers away and dies, because cowardice does not allow the chivalrous spirit to be fed. In order to have chivalry, you have to practice and cultivate chivalry.
Yeah.
And it's not being cultivated by Sir Damas. So
Damas.
Yeah, like Alexander. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damas. So I think it's a pretty on-the-face metaphor of like, this cowardice is literally killing chivalry.
Yeah. So soon after, all these knights tell him what's up, a damsel comes down into the prison to speak with Arthur. She asks him, what cheer? And he says, I cannot say, which I think is amusing, because basically what is happening is she's like, how are you? And he's like, I'm not bothering with these pleasantries. No.
Well, and she's like, hey, what's good with you? And he goes, literally nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing's
I
good.
cannot say anything that's
You're
good
looking
with
at me through bars,
Like,
asking me what's good.
I am in prison. So the damsel asks him if he would fight for her lord or stay in the prison. And Arthur says, this is a hard choice, but I would rather fight with a knight than die in prison. So if I do this, I'll be freed along with the others. And she's like, you will. And he's like, okay, then I'll do it. Will I have a horse and armor? And she's like, you will lack for nothing.
So I don't know if it says this in your version, but in mine it specifies that Arthur says, I'll fight for my freedom, but I'm also fighting for the freedom of the other knights that are here. She's like, deal. And he's like, but I want them freed regardless of the outcome. So he's made the deal that even if he loses, all the other knights in prison with him still get to go free.
It's possible he said that, and I just didn't understand it.
Okay. I think to me that's an important
That
part
does
of it,
seem important part
because this is Arthur being the epitome of chivalry. In the face of cowardice, he's still accepting the challenge, because one of the things that makes chivalry so good is the self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'll do it. All these other knights were too proud to say yes and sacrifice themselves, even when maybe it wasn't worth sacrificing themselves for. But
Yeah.
Arthur is like, I know I'm the High King. I'm still not above the code of chivalry. I will sacrifice myself, but not for Sir Damas, for these other knights that are in prison.
Yeah. So that is an important detail. Okay, so he's like, "Can I have a horse and armor?" She's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, and he's like, can I at least be equipped for
yeah.
the fight?
And
Because
she's like,
come on.
you will want for nothing. And then like when she says that, he's like appraising her, and he's like, "It seems to me that I should have seen you in the court of Arthur." She's like, "Nay, I never went there. I am the Lord's daughter of this castle."
Mhm.
This was a lie. The damsel was secretly Morgan Le Fay in disguise.
So in mine, it said it was one of Morgan Le Fay's handmaidens.
Interesting.
That he had seen
Okay.
in the court.
Interesting. So Morgan goes to Sir Damas or one of her damsels.
Yeah.
Morgan or a proxy goes to Sir Damas and updates him on the conversation with Arthur. Arthur was brought before him, and the terms of the agreement were set. Then all the imprisoned knights were brought into the great hall to witness the battle. And that is where we're going to stop this episode. We're going to end on that cliffhanger. Next episode, Arthur fights for his life.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.